Matt Hested, Director of Communications for the Georgia Forestry Association, here today at the Georgia Forestry Commission to talk with Brian Clavier, Chief Investigator of the Georgia Forestry Commission, Head over Timber Security and Arson. We want to get an update from him on where timber theft and timber security is since House Bill 790 was passed 2 years ago. Let's go learn a little bit from him.
Well, like I said, a theft we consider to be a crime where somebody intentionally either takes wood that they didn't have authority to take intentionally, or they don't pay for wood that they maybe had authority to take. Whereas a timber trespass would be more of an unintentional cutting across a line or a sale boundary, or cutting trees that weren't intended to be harvested, but it was unintentional, where there wasn't an intent to commit a crime or to take trees that they didn't have permission to take. Probably one of the biggest things was just getting awareness out there to the industry and the landowners. But there's several changes that went about. Probably one of the bigger changes was on the civil side, where prior to the last year, if you harvested somebody's trees unintentionally or across the line, you only had to pay fair market value, whereas now it's 3 times fair market value, plus reforestation costs, professional fees, attorney's fees, and then if it was intentional, there can be punitive damages also. So now that's more in line with other states. We were one of only, I think, a couple of states that still had single damages. So now it's 3 times, and obviously the intent there was to cause some concern and more awareness that you're on the property you're supposed to be on, and that there's some monetary penalty if you cut where you're not authorized. The other part was it kind of gave the Forestry Commission, it didn't expand our authority, but kind of identified what it is, and they included timber security in our authority so that we can enforce the timber laws related to harvest. There was some protection for landowners if they're having a harvest conducted and that harvest goes onto their neighbor's property. Then if they've either had a survey done, clearly marked a line, or had an agreement that line was where that line was, then they're insulated from any liability of an unintentional cut on their neighbor's property. So those are some of the bigger changes. They didn't actually create a timber theft statute. They felt like there was enough theft statutes. And there's a requirement to pay within 20 days of harvest if you harvest timber. So they used the scale ticket law and changed it to make it 20 days. So scale tickets have to be delivered to the owner within 20 days, which is consistent with the 20 days for payment. So those are kind of some of the changes that went in. Like I said, they looked at a lot of other states and had a lot of input, and it seems to really made it the industry, law enforcement, landowners a lot more aware of what's out there and what they should be doing. Since July of last year through October of this year, 16 months, we've had 154 complaints come into the Forestry Commission, which is pretty close to what we had expected. Talking to South Carolina and Alabama, we figured it about 10 to 15 a month, 100 to 150 cases. So we're probably on track of where we anticipated. We've made 12 charges on those cases. Spent about 2,600 hours investigating those cases. So that was it's been a huge undertaking from the Forestry Commission's aspect to answer these complaints and investigate them and find out if there was a crime, and if we have evidence to pursue those charges. And most of the complaints we see are smaller landowners, and 100 acres or less, and as far as smaller in timber industry. And a lot of those don't live on or near their property, and most of them have never sold timber before, and probably just getting a little more research finding out what the process is, what you can expect, um, maybe getting more than one bid, getting a consulting forester to maybe look at the property, get some advice, do some research, find out what you can expect, what the options are, and get all that beforehand. A lot of times we have people who look into that after the fact, after they've signed a contract or after they've had a harvest, and then they realize that maybe they didn't want to work with that particular buyer or logger once they hear some background. So doing that up front and doing some research can pay off. We'd much rather help a landowner deal with a landowner before they're a victim than after. They can go by any one of our offices. We have an internal system where they can log those complaints in, and it goes directly to us. There's information about timber sales, how to some handouts, some pamphlets on timber sales there. There's some links to the laws on our website, so a lot of that information is there. If they'll or go by any one of our offices, and anybody works for us will be more than happy to help them.